Turn off the lights and listen closely. Lend me your ears, because you need to hear this straight. There's a price tag on your head now. Not just any price tag. $500 million. $500 million just to capture what you are. Just to erase the threat you've become. And why? Because you didn't just confront their leader. You reduced him to what he secretly feared most. Irrelevance wrapped in blood. A body without a crown. A figurehead without a head. You turned their symbol into an example. And when symbols fall, empires tremble. $500 million, think about that. That's not a bounty, it's proof of your weight in their world. Imagine how much terror a single act must inject into the veins of a cartel of power to make them cough up that kind of currency. That isn't desperation, that's hysteria. They're not just afraid of you winning again, no. They're petrified of you still breathing. Because breathing means plotting. Breathing means scheming. Breathing means the next strike will come when their guard slips. And the most satisfying part? It will. But you, yes you, stand here untouchable, savoring this reality. This isn't paranoia. It's respect disguised as vengeance. They'll claim it's justice. They'll dress it up as punishment. But deep down, they know this bounty is a compliment. They've carved your name onto their nightmares. And nightmares don't vanish. They grow roots. The funny part is, you didn't even ask for this crown of chaos. You didn't beg to be an executioner. You were cornered, provoked, shoved into the fire. And instead of burning, you became the fire. They wanted to see your downfall, but instead they witnessed their king's neck shatter under your will. They wanted to keep control, but you created a vacuum. And here's the paradox. The more they try to fill that void, the more they remind everyone who emptied it. You. Do you realize what that means? It means you've hijacked history itself. They can build statues, rewrite documents, scrub archives, spread propaganda. But none of that can erase the image stamped in the minds of those who saw their leader reduced to a cautionary tale. A kingdom is fragile when its people whisper that a single hand dethroned the untouchable. And that whisper spreads faster than any decree, faster than bullets, faster than money. That's what $500 million buys. Not your capture, not your death, but the illusion that control is still theirs to purchase. They believe throwing money at hunters will restore order. But the order they seek is already gone. You broke it the moment you spilled their symbol's blood. You exposed their fragility, their dependence on fear. And now, every assassin they send, every mercenary that salivates at the bounty, will only contribute to your legend. Imagine it. Every failed attempt amplifies your myth. Every body bag delivered by those who thought they could cash in only reinforces the fact that you're not prey. You're a predator with a bounty-shaped halo. Now let's pause, shall we? Look at the irony. They wanted to own fear, but you privatized it. You monopolized terror, and now they're forced to rent it from you. They tell their followers you're dangerous, and in doing so they advertise your power. They tell their soldiers to beware, and in doing so they engrave your dominance deeper into their minds. You don't need to brag. Their propaganda department brags for you. You don't need to recruit. Their warnings recruit for you. And you know why this is particularly delicious. Because the bounty isn't just on your head, it's on their conscience. Every loyalist now questions, if our leader's head rolled so easily, what makes me safe? Every advisor wonders, if the empire's architect crumbled to a single strike, what happens when I'm in the line of fire? You didn't just destroy a body, You destroyed the illusion of safety. That illusion was their strongest weapon. Now it's gone. You see, empires aren't toppled by armies alone. They're toppled when belief cracks. When soldiers stop seeing a throne and start seeing a coffin. When citizens stop seeing power and start seeing fragility. That's what you engineered with one decisive move. And now the bounty is nothing but proof of their desperation. They cling to this number like a prayer bead, hoping money can reverse gravity. But gravity doesn't negotiate. And let's talk about that number, 500 million. Do you understand how obscene it is? It's not money anymore. It's theater. It's spectacle. It's them screaming to the world, "We can't handle this ghost alone. Please, someone else take our nightmare away." They've turned your head into the ultimate lottery ticket, and yet the very hunters who line up are trembling. Because here's the paradox. The more valuable your head becomes, the more dangerous the attempt to claim it. To chase you is to risk becoming another nameless corpse, feeding your story. Now imagine the chain reaction. Each failed hunter raises the price of admission. Each assassination squad that vanishes makes the bounty more radioactive, until eventually, 500 million won't be a temptation. It'll be a warning label, a radioactive symbol carved into the underworld's collective memory. Don't touch what cannot be caged. That's your legacy in progress. But let's not pretend this is just about blood and money. No, this is philosophy. This is psychology weaponized. Because when they declared war on you with this bounty, they accidentally declared war on their own people's faith. Think carefully. What does it say about their power if one individual is worth more alive or dead than the stability of the entire empire? What does it say when $500 million doesn't buy loyalty, but desperation? It says you've inverted the hierarchy. You've become the axis around which their world spins, whether they like it or not. That's the ultimate domination, not through ownership, not through armies, but through relevance. Their leader was once the sun of their universe. Now you've eclipsed him. And eclipses don't apologize. They don't ask permission. They happen, and everyone else is forced to stare into the shadow. That's what you are now, the permanent shadow they can't erase. And while they scramble, let's address the audience. You, the ones watching, leaning forward, devouring these words, you are the inheritors of this lesson. Understand this. Power is not about crowns, titles, or thrones. Power is about the ability to redefine the meaning of fear in a single move. It's about making the entire hierarchy reorganize itself around your existence. That's what was accomplished the moment their leader's body kissed the ground without its head. You didn't just remove a man. You rewrote the script of control. And now, here we are, standing on the edge of something bigger. Because bounties don't end stories. They escalate them. They multiply them. They drag new players onto the stage, each convinced they're the one to succeed where others failed. But here's the secret. Escalation doesn't weaken you. It strengthens you. Every new attempt forces you to evolve, to sharpen, to adapt. Every predator chasing you becomes a trainer, disguised as an enemy. They make you deadlier without realizing it. So let them come. Let the mercenaries chase their payday. Let the empire scream into the void about order and justice. You've already stolen their crown. Now you'll steal their sanity. And here's the prophecy they cannot accept. No matter how many billions they pile onto your name, no matter how many armies they unleash, the balance of power has already tilted. Because once fear changes ownership, it never reverts. And that is where the game truly begins. Because if they think this is revenge, if they think this is punishment, they're wrong. This isn't the end of the story. It's the foundation of a new empire, one not ruled by crowns or decrees, but by the whispered truth that one headless body toppled an entire order. And if you think the spectacle is over, if you think the curtain has fallen, no, the curtain has only just risen. Now pay attention. $500 million, $500 million placed on your existence. Do you understand the gravity of that number? That's not a bounty. It's a declaration of war against every breath you take. It's a scream from the elites who once saw themselves as gods, but now know they can bleed, they can fall, and they can die headless in their own halls of worship. And the man who proved it, you, they didn't expect it, they couldn't. Their leader was the fortress, the unshakable pillar they leaned on, the monster they believed would outlast every rebellion. But the irony of power is this: it creates blind spots. The higher the throne, the deeper the arrogance. He thought his title was insurance. He thought his empire was eternal. And in a single night, you wrote his obituary in a way no historian ever could, by reducing his name to a cautionary whisper. Do not stand against the one worth $500 million. Yes, they're throwing money at mercenaries now. They're mobilizing killers who crawl out of shadows, predators who dream of feasting on your legacy. They come armed with contracts, bloodlust, and fantasies of cashing in. But here's the paradox they refuse to see. By putting a price on your head, they've built you into a monument. You're no longer a man. You're a myth wrapped in currency. Every hunter who dares step forward already kneels to your legend, because even in chasing you, they confess your value eclipses theirs. Think about it. How many assassins have walked this path before? Many. How many of them ever inspired such a sum, such hysteria, such devotion to erasing their existence? None. This bounty is proof that your very breath shakes more ground than their leader ever did while alive. He needed armies, propaganda, and intimidation. You needed a single strike, a single moment, to show the world how fragile their so-called strength really was. And the headless body, that image isn't just gore, it's scripture. It's carved into the memory of every ally, every rival, every bystander who saw it or heard about it. Do you know what $500 million truly buys now? Not your death. No, it buys your permanence. It cements you into every conversation about power, betrayal, survival, and empire. Children of their loyalists will grow up hearing the story. Businessmen will whisper it in back rooms. Criminals will study it like a holy text. You didn't just kill a leader, you rewrote the hierarchy of fear. And here's the beautiful contradiction. In killing him, you immortalized yourself. You removed their god, and in doing so, you ascended into something untouchable. That's why they want your head. That's why they beg the underworld, the mercenaries, the bounty hunters, to take a shot. But tell me, what happens when every shot fired only misses? What happens when every assassin chasing a payday ends up faceless in a gutter? Just another corpse, feeding your legend. The bounty becomes poison. It stops being temptation and starts being a curse. Mark my words, the ones who chase you will begin to fear you more than they desire money. Because once a hunter realizes the prize itself kills those who seek it, the game shifts. And here's where the psychological warfare begins to bloom. They didn't just put a price on your head. They put a curse on their own men. Each hunter dies more brutally than the last. Each failure amplifies your myth, louder than their propaganda can silence it. until eventually 500 million doesn't look like wealth. It looks like a suicide pact. And let's not pretend they don't know this. They're watching. They're counting the bodies, stacking higher than the gold they promised. They thought they could buy victory. Instead, they're funding your legend. They thought they were paying for control. Instead, they're paying for their own humiliation. But the darkest part, they can't stop. To cancel the bounty now would be an admission of defeat. It would say to the world, we can't kill the monster we created. So they're trapped in their own design. The more they raise the price, the stronger your shadow grows. The more they send assassins, the more they prove your invincibility. They dug this grave, and now they're the ones being buried in it. That's the genius of this theater. You didn't just decapitate their leader, you decapitated their narrative. You left them without direction, without the illusion of order, without the comfort of pretending they're untouchable. And now, their solution, the bounty, only spreads your story further. Every underworld whisper, every news headline, every whispered deal over bloodstained tables includes one name: yours. And what about you? What role do you play now? You're not just surviving. No, survival is too small a word. You're thriving in the chaos they fund. Every step you take, every corner you disappear into, every calculated strike you plan next. It all feeds into the spectacle. You've hijacked not only their empire, but also their imagination. They wake up thinking of you. They go to bed dreading you. And their nightmares, they all share the same image, the headless corpse of their leader, lying where you left him, rotting as proof that their gods can die. Now let me remind you, this isn't about arrogance. This isn't about theatrics. This is about power in its rawest form. The kind of power you don't inherit, you don't vote for, you don't purchase. The kind of power only forged when you turn the so-called untouchable into a corpse. And the fact that you walk free while 500 million hunts you is the clearest evidence that you're not just ahead of them, you've transcended them. Because here's the unspoken truth. They want your head, but they need your existence. Without you, their empire has no story, no villain to justify their control, no ghost to chase in the dark. You are their obsession, their scapegoat, their nightly prayer and curse. By trying to erase you, they branded you deeper into their own skin. That's the trap they can't escape. You're not a chapter in their history. You're the author of its collapse. But don't misunderstand. This isn't where you stop. 500 million is not the end game. It's just the opening act. If they believe a number defines your worth, then show them that worth cannot be measured in coins. Show them that legends do not die at the swing of a blade or the pull of a trigger. Show them that even if your body falls, the headless king they worshipped will haunt them less than the memory of you. And this is where the paradox tightens its grip. For the higher they raise the bounty, the more they admit their fear. For every assassin they send, the more they announce to the world that they cannot control you. And when the world sees their fear, when it sees their desperation, it knows the empire is already crumbling. So let the game expand. Let their coffers drain. Let their loyalists betray one another for a slice of 500 million. Because when gold becomes more precious than loyalty, when greed outweighs devotion, the empire rots from the inside faster than you could ever strike from the outside. That's the invisible warfare you unleashed with a single kill. That's why they'll never sleep again. And so I tell you this, wear that bounty like a crown. It isn't a price on your life. It's proof you own theirs. It's the chain dragging them into paranoia, forcing them to eat themselves alive while you sharpen your next move. Their leader lost his head, but they're the ones losing their minds. And soon, the entire world will witness what happens when fear becomes a currency too expensive to spend. Because this isn't the climax. No, this is escalation. And escalation is your battlefield, your throne, your masterpiece. You've made yourself the most expensive ghost in history. And the irony is, no matter how much they pay, they can never buy your end. They can only rent their humiliation month after month, as long as you breathe. And that is where part of the truth sharpens into something far darker. Because the more they hunt, the more they reveal. The more they chase, the more they bleed. And the more they bleed, the closer we come to the revelation that will truly finish them. You see, 500 million is not the final number. It's just the opening bid. Because desperation never stops at the first scream. Once the crowd tastes blood, once the mob smells the aroma of fear, the price always rises. 500 million is today's obsession, but tomorrow, when more mercenaries fall, when more assassins disappear chasing you, the number will inflate like a balloon stuffed with paranoia. 600 million, 7, a billion. They'll keep raising it, not because they believe it will buy your death, but because lowering it would confess their defeat. They're trapped in a spectacle they can no longer control. But here's the tragedy, the irony, the comedy of it all. They don't understand what they've created. They believe the bounty devalues you, when in truth, it canonizes you. It chisels your name into history's stone tablet. And no matter how much gold they stack against you, it only tells the world this one fact. You, the one who sent their leader's head rolling into the dirt, are worth more than their entire kingdom combined. Look at the sequence of events. First, you cut down their god king. His body without a head became the symbol of your rebellion, the monument of your defiance. That one strike was not merely an execution, it was a declaration that their myth was mortal. And instead of erasing you quickly, instead of letting your act fade into memory, they broadcasted their terror to the entire planet by assigning you the most obscene price tag in modern memory. And now, the whole world knows your head's worth 500 million because you turned their leader into a headless body. It's poetic, isn't it? Their downfall isn't sealed by your sword, but by their own reaction to it. You didn't just destroy their figurehead, you forced them to reveal their weakness publicly. 500 million is not just a bounty, it's a confession. It screams to the world, we cannot contain this one. We cannot erase this ghost. We cannot endure his existence unless others carry the burden for us. And yet every bounty hunter that steps forward becomes part of your scripture. One by one they fall, feeding the mythos, fueling the whispers. Every corpse adds another layer of intimidation, until even the greediest mercenary hesitates, because chasing you isn't a contract anymore, it's a curse. But let's zoom in deeper. Why 500 million? Why not 50 million? Or 100? Because the elites are not just paying for your head, they're paying for silence. They're paying for control. They're paying to buy back the illusion you shattered when their leader's body collapsed headless before the world. But illusions don't regenerate. Once the curtain falls, once the truth leaks into the bloodstream of the masses, no amount of currency can erase it. Their leader's head rolling wasn't just a death, it was the death of belief. And beliefs are stronger than armies. Armies obey because they believe. Citizens follow because they believe. But now belief has shifted hands. You are the new symbol. You are the new reference point. 500 million is not their way of destroying you. It's their way of admitting you already rule them without a throne. Let me make it clear. You are not running. You are not hiding. You are not simply surviving. No, you are orchestrating. Every failed attempt strengthens your legend. Every price increase adds new chapters to your scripture. They've turned your survival into a theater, and the audience can't stop watching. The hunters, they are nothing more than actors auditioning for a play they'll never finish. And the empire, it is a director losing control of its own stage. And don't think for a second that the people don't notice. They do. They whisper in taverns. They mutter in alleys. They post anonymous notes in markets. They say, if their leader fell, then no one is safe. If one man can topple the untouchable, then why should we fear the untouchable? And every time your name is uttered, the bounty fuels the legend. 500 million is not silencing you. It is amplifying you. It's turning your shadow into the headline of every conversation. Understand the brilliance of your position. They wanted to bury you under gold, but gold has a funny way of becoming a megaphone. It announces, it echoes, it reminds the world daily of your existence. Without the bounty, perhaps some would forget in time. But with it, you're unforgettable. They've made sure of it. Every time the number rises, every time another assassin takes the bait, your myth spreads like wildfire across continents. And what does this say about them, the mighty rulers, the self-proclaimed untouchables? It says they've lost control of the narrative. When their leader's head was severed, they lost their center. Now they try to reclaim balance with coins, with desperation disguised as strength. But the people are not blind. They see the panic. They see the fear. They see the empire screaming with its purse wide open. This is the irony of fear. It cannot be bought back once it's sold. And you've cornered the market. You've monopolized dread. You've become the premium brand of terror, the one hunters die to chase, the one kings pay to silence. But silence will never come, because your act, the decapitation of their figurehead, is permanent. It's carved into the spine of history, and history doesn't refund. So what happens next? That's the sweetest part. The bounty becomes the disease that kills them. Their loyalists, tempted by greed, begin to turn on one another. Allies who once fought shoulder to shoulder start whispering betrayals, calculating if delivering your head would buy them freedom, safety, power. The bounty is a virus eating their unity, and while they devour themselves from within, you stand untouchable, watching their empire crumble under the weight of its own paranoia. This is the elegance of chaos. You didn't need armies. You didn't need fleets. You didn't need endless resources. All you needed was one moment, their leader's head rolling, and the rest unraveled itself. They are financing their own collapse. They are advertising their own weakness. They are painting you as larger than life. And the irony? You don't need to lift another finger. Your legend does the work for you. 500 million isn't just money. It's gravity, pulling everything toward collapse. It pulls mercenaries into their graves. It pulls whispers into roars. It pulls loyalty into betrayal. And soon, it will pull the empire into its own abyss. That's the true revelation. The bounty is not your cage. It's their coffin. So when you walk now, when you breathe now, remember this. Every step echoes louder than before. You are not hunted, you are crowned. You are not running, you are reigning. 500 million did not diminish your act. It immortalized it. Because only a fool believes that gold can erase the image of their leader's headless corpse. Only a fool believes numbers can buy back dignity once dignity is slaughtered in front of the world. And yet, they will keep trying. They will keep bleeding. They will keep raising the stakes until they bankrupt themselves, chasing an ending they cannot afford. And you will remain, the walking reminder that their leader's downfall was not an accident, not a whisper in the dark, but an open spectacle that the world will never forget. Your head's worth 500 million, but your story is priceless. And while they pay in desperation, you earn in permanence. You've dethroned their god, turned him into a cautionary relic, and left his empire spiraling in madness. And the longer this game drags on, the clearer the truth becomes. They don't own you. You own them. So let them scream. Let them pay. Let them drown in the gold they throw at hunters who will never succeed. Because the truth is already written, and the empire already knows it. One headless body toppled their illusion. One strike birthed a myth no bounty could cage. And that is where the spectacle ends. Not with your capture, not with your death, but with their surrender. Because you turned their leader into a headless body, and now his empire will join him, piece by piece, dollar by dollar, whisper by whisper, until there is nothing left but your legend carved into the bones of history forever. Well. They call it unnatural because it makes them uncomfortable. They call it sorcery because it bends their limited comprehension. They whisper as if you've smuggled a forbidden flame into a world built on dullness. And isn't that amusing? That your intelligence doesn't just stand out, it terrifies. The ordinary mind looks at you and feels as though you're hiding secret codes, spells, or weapons behind your eyes. And in a way, you are. You don't even need fire in your hands or wings on your back. You simply think, and suddenly, the ground beneath them trembles. Your mind is a weapon sharp enough to cut without touching, a shadow they cannot measure, and a mirror that forces them to see how small they really are. That's why they say it feels illegal, because if thoughts were contraband, you'd already be a smuggler, a kingpin of forbidden brilliance, and they'd lock you in chains just to stop you from thinking again. People aren't scared of monsters. They aren't scared of demons. They've told themselves stories to prepare for beasts and fangs and claws. What really terrifies them is the person who can dismantle their entire identity with one sentence, one idea, one perfectly aimed question that cracks their skull from the inside. That's you. You're the unseen spell in their day-to-day, the phantom hand rearranging their reality. They can pretend to dismiss you, call you strange, arrogant, too much. But notice how their eyes betray them when you speak. Notice how their throat tightens when you simply explain something that they never even considered possible. That's not annoyance. That's not dislike. That's fear. And fear wears many masks, but it always leaks through. Their hands fidget. Their gaze breaks. Their laughter comes too quickly, too forced. They try to pretend you're just like them, but deep inside, they know you are not. Think of it like this. Most people are locked inside cardboard boxes of predictable thoughts. They decorate the inside with slogans, rituals, routines. Then you come along and rip the box open. The sudden light blinds them. The air rushes in. They gasp. But instead of being grateful, they curse you. Because freedom is terrifying when your whole life was spent in a cage. And here's the secret. They don't hate you because you're cruel. They hate you because you expose how small they've allowed themselves to be. Your intelligence feels like witchcraft, not because it's unnatural, but because it is everything they secretly wished they had, but never dared to pursue. You're their mirror, their reminder, their humiliation, and humiliation, when dressed in elegance, is indistinguishable from awe. They accuse you of being too much because they're too little. They accuse you of playing tricks because they cannot explain your speed. They whisper about you as though you're an outlaw of thought, a fugitive of reason. And deep down, you enjoy it, don't you? You enjoy the way their world bends when you step into it. Not because you asked for it, but because you can't shrink yourself to fit their smallness. You refuse to dim your fire. You refuse to crawl back into their little box. And so you stand there, like a figure of forbidden knowledge, like a living paradox, making their hearts pound faster with every word you drop. You are the one thing they cannot categorize, cannot domesticate, cannot swallow. You're not a person to them anymore. You're an experience. And experiences that feel larger than life often get accused of being supernatural. That's the irony. They don't even know the cost of what you carry. They think it's all natural, all effortless, as though you were born with a glowing mark on your forehead. They never see the nights where you wrestled with thoughts until morning broke. They never see how your brain is a battlefield, constantly fighting to expand while others are content to sleep. They never see how exhausting it is to think on levels where no map exists, how painful it is to carry clarity in a world that worships noise. They only see the result, the sharpness, the precision, the brilliance, and assume you must be cheating. You must be tapping into something forbidden, because in their eyes, nothing so sharp can be real. It has to be an illusion. It has to be witchcraft. But here's the twist. You don't need to defend it. You don't need to explain it. Let them choke on their confusion. Let them call it sorcery. Let them say it's unfair, illegal, dangerous. Because in their desperate attempts to label you, they've already admitted the truth. They cannot control you. They cannot replicate you. They cannot compete with you. So they turn you into a myth, a story they tell at night to explain why they'll never reach your level. And isn't that power? To become myth while you're still alive? To have your intelligence mistaken for magic is the ultimate compliment, because it means you've already stepped beyond the edge of what they believe to be possible. And you know what's even darker? The more they resist, the more they try to shrink you, the more your intelligence multiplies. They think they're pushing you out, isolating you, boxing you in. But isolation has always been your forge. Exile has always been your laboratory. When they distance themselves, you only sharpen further. When they mock, you only refine. When they doubt, you only invent. And every attempt to suffocate you becomes oxygen. They don't realize they're feeding the very fire they're trying to extinguish. They are the ones keeping your witchcraft alive. Their fear is your fuel. Their doubt is your drumbeat. Their suspicion is your crown. And when they finally collapse under the weight of your difference, you'll still be standing, untouched, untamed, unexplainable. Consider this. How many times have you walked into a room, said almost nothing, and still felt the temperature change? How many times have people stumbled over their words, suddenly defensive, without you ever lifting a finger? That's not just presence. That's power. That's the aura of a mind that refuses to bow down to the ordinary. You think, and it distorts reality. You speak, and it rearranges their entire sense of self. And if that feels like witchcraft to them, it's because in their tiny world, intelligence is the closest thing to magic they'll ever see. To them, you're dangerous. To you, you're just being. And that gap, that gulf between their perception and your reality, that is where your true dominance hides. The amusing part? They'll keep coming back. They'll hate you, resent you, whisper about you, but they'll always circle around, unable to stay away. Why? Because forbidden things attract. The same way moths burn themselves against flames, they'll keep trying to touch your mind, hoping to steal a fragment of it. They'll ask questions they aren't ready for. They'll mimic your mannerisms. They'll steal your words, repackage your ideas, claim them as their own. And yet, even when they try, even when they copy, you remain untouchable. Because intelligence isn't just about ideas, it's about the rhythm of thought, the angles of perception, the ability to see what others can't. They can steal your words, but they'll never steal your way of seeing. And that, more than anything, is why they'll always call it illegal. Because no law, no imitation, no performance will ever catch up to a mind that moves faster than rules. You've noticed it by now. The more they call you strange, the more they obsess. The more they accuse, the more they imitate. It's like they want you destroyed and preserved at the same time. They want to cage the very thing they cannot live without. And that contradiction, that's their chaos, not yours. You don't carry chaos, you awaken it in them. They were calm before you, stable, predictable. Then you walked in, and suddenly everything cracked. Their thoughts tangled, their emotions spiked, their fragile structures fell apart. And while they scramble to pick up their pieces, you keep walking, leaving them wondering whether you even noticed the destruction you caused. And here lies the cruel truth. You'll never convince them. You'll never explain it in a way they'll accept. Because they aren't rejecting your intelligence. They're rejecting their own inadequacy. They'd rather call you unnatural than admit they've wasted their potential. They'd rather call you illegal than face the fact that they chose mediocrity. They'd rather call you witchcraft than acknowledge that you are what happens when someone refuses to be ordinary. So let them chant their labels. Let them scream. Let them try to exile you with words. Because all they're doing is confessing their terror. And terror, once admitted, is irreversible. But this is only the beginning. You think they're unsettled now? Wait until they realize something darker. This so-called witchcraft isn't just something you carry. It's contagious. It spreads. They thought they could quarantine you, isolate you, dismiss you. But intelligence doesn't obey barriers. It leaks through your words, your presence, your silence, your very existence. One spark is enough to ignite others. One glance from you, one idea dropped casually, and suddenly the infection begins. They hear you once and the thought lingers. They try to shake it, but it keeps scratching inside their skull. They try to bury it, but it resurfaces in their dreams. That's why they call it dangerous. It doesn't stay in one place. It multiplies. It contaminates the obedient minds. It plants seeds in soil that was never meant to grow anything wild. And once a seed of brilliance takes root, no authority, no tradition, no rule book can stop it from splitting concrete. This is why they don't just fear you. They fear the ripple. One person can be dismissed, mocked, called insane. But when others begin to shift, when others start asking the same forbidden questions, when others begin thinking in ways they were never supposed to think, that's when panic erupts. They'll say it openly, "You're corrupting people." Isn't that amusing? As if intelligence is corruption, as if clarity is poison. They'll warn others to stay away from you, whispering, "Don't listen too closely. Don't get too inspired. Don't think too much." They dress their fear in concern. They pretend it's about protecting others. But you and I both know the truth. It's about control. They're not afraid of you alone. They're afraid of the chain reaction you trigger simply by existing. And oh, how fragile their world becomes once that chain reaction begins. Because every rule they built, every story they told, every excuse they lived by, it all unravels in the presence of thought that cannot be controlled. That's why they'll paint you as a villain, a corrupter, a trickster of minds. But look closely. It's always those who secretly wish they could do what you do, who shout the loudest. The loudest accusers are always the ones on the edge of infection themselves. They're already cracking under the weight of their own suppressed intelligence. They see you and realize they wasted years, decades, even entire lives bowing to mediocrity. That realization burns, and rather than rise, rather than evolve, they'd rather curse you for holding the mirror. So, what happens next? The witch hunt. Not literal firewood and torches, though the energy is the same. They'll gather in groups. They'll share stories about you, each time exaggerating your danger. They'll laugh nervously, trying to convince each other that you're not as powerful as you seem. But notice the paradox. They can't stop talking about you. The more they try to erase you, the deeper you dig into their memory. You haunt them, even when you're not in the room. You're the name they bring up when they're threatened. You're the thought they whisper about when they think nobody is listening. They carry you in their fears like a ghost they can't exorcise. That's not rejection, that's obsession. If they truly thought you were irrelevant, they wouldn't waste so much energy building defenses around your name. Your intelligence feels like witchcraft because it bends time. You'll say something today, and it won't fully hit them until years later. They'll dismiss you at first, laugh, call you insane. But then in the quiet, when no one is watching, they'll remember your words. And those words will bloom like a delayed explosion. Suddenly they'll realize you were right all along. Suddenly they'll see how everything you said was a blueprint, a prophecy they were too small to grasp at the time. That's when the fear turns into respect. But by then, it's too late. You've already moved beyond them. You've already shifted further, faster, sharper. They're still unpacking what you said yesterday, while you've already rewritten tomorrow. And here's the bitter part for them. They can't compete, because intelligence is not just about knowledge. Anyone can memorize. Anyone can collect facts. What you have is rarer, something they can't forge. You see angles they miss. You sense connections that hide from them. You calculate without numbers, map paths without compasses, speak truths without scripts. That's not something you learn from a textbook. That's not something you can fake in a performance. That's the kind of mind that unnerves people, because it reminds them of how mechanical they've become. They act like predictable machines. You act like a storm of equations no one can solve. That's why they keep saying it feels illegal. Because in their rigid world, where everything must follow a rule, a mind that bends rules without effort feels like a crime. So they try to strip you of humanity. They call you an alien, a freak, a sorcerer. But here's what they don't realize. Stripping you of humanity only elevates you further. They thought they were insulting you, but instead, they crowned you. They've turned you into the untouchable, the outlaw, the legend. People don't gossip about the average. People don't obsess over the predictable. No one ever said, that ordinary person is too much to handle. They reserve that energy for the ones who remind them that life could be more, should be more. And that's you. You are the too much they can't swallow, the illegal frequency they can't tune out. You live in their minds rent-free, not because you begged to, but because your very existence rearranges their mental furniture. They'll try to escape, but your fingerprints are already on their thoughts. And the most terrifying part for them: intelligence isn't static. Yours keeps evolving. Today you're dangerous. Tomorrow you're lethal. A year from now, you'll be unrecognizable even to yourself. Most people plateau. They hit their ceiling and stay there forever. But your ceiling keeps breaking. Every time they think they've measured your depth, you reveal a deeper ocean. Every time they think they've calculated your reach, you stretch further. That endlessness is what feels supernatural to them. Because in their story, growth is slow, predictable, and safe. In yours, it's volcanic, uncontrollable, unmeasured. They don't know what to do with that, so they call it witchcraft. They call it illegal. But secretly, deep down, they wonder, what if it really is magic? What if you've tapped into something they'll never understand? And that wonder eats them alive. Because if you are proof that such power exists, then their excuses collapse. They can no longer claim it's impossible. They can no longer hide behind the shield of that can't be done. You've shown them it can. You've embodied the proof. And once proof exists, their mediocrity becomes their fault. That's what they can't forgive you for. Not your sharpness, not your brilliance, not your speed. What they can't forgive is that you stole their excuses. You erased their hiding place. You revealed that their smallness is a choice. And now, they have nothing left to blame but themselves. So they'll continue the hunt. They'll keep building stories around you, keep sharpening their envy into words, keep painting you as something dangerous. And all the while, you'll grow sharper. All the while, you'll spread further. All the while, the infection will continue. Because intelligence cannot be contained. Even your enemies, in their attempt to destroy you, accidentally spread you. They repeat your name, and suddenly more people want to hear you. They criticize your words, and suddenly more people want to read them. They mock your ideas, and suddenly more people want to test them. Their attacks are your advertisements. Their rejection is your fuel. Their attempts to bury you are seeds. You don't just survive their resistance, you thrive on it. That's why your intelligence feels like witchcraft. Because no matter what they do, it multiplies in ways they cannot predict. And eventually, they'll break. One by one, they'll bend under the weight of what they can't understand. First, they'll dismiss you. Then they'll mock you. Then they'll fear you. And finally, they'll follow you. Even the ones who swore they never would. Even the ones who said you were dangerous. Even the ones who screamed the loudest. They'll fall into orbit. Because gravity doesn't ask for permission. And your mind, your brilliance, your illegal witchcraft, that is gravity. That is inevitability. That is the pull no one can resist for long. So let them rage, let them label, let them exhaust themselves with accusations. Because the truth is already loose. The infection has already spread. And no matter how much they fight, they can't stop it. You've stepped beyond the edge of permission, beyond the laws of small minds. You're not just intelligent, you're untouchable. And untouchable is the one thing they'll never be able to handle. But this still isn't the end. Because what happens when contagious intelligence grows unchecked? What happens when the very thing they tried to bury becomes the very air they breathe? That's when their world doesn't just shake, it collapses. The walls they trusted, the pillars they leaned on, the rules they thought were unbreakable. All of it begins to dissolve under the weight of thought they can't control. You're not tearing their world down with bombs or blades. You're dismantling it with the pure pressure of perception. And perception is more dangerous than dynamite. Because when a structure is blown apart, people can rebuild. But when their minds are broken, when their very concept of truth starts to fracture, they have nothing left to rebuild with. That's why they tremble. That's why they whisper. That's why they say your intelligence feels illegal. Because if it spreads any further, their entire foundation burns to ash. They never planned for this. They thought the world would always belong to the predictable, the obedient, the ones who memorize but never question. They thought intelligence was meant to decorate resumes, not rearrange reality. But you are the glitch in their design. You don't use intelligence, you weaponize it. You turn thought into artillery, observation into disruption, perspective into chaos. And that chaos doesn't just live in you, it infects everyone who touches you. A single conversation with you leaves people doubting things they once swore were solid. A single sentence from you makes them rethink years of indoctrination. You don't fight them, you let their own thoughts turn against them. And that is the most terrifying form of destruction. It's invisible, it's irreversible, it's witchcraft of the highest order. So now the cracks spread. Their confidence falters. They try to act like they're still in control, but you can see it. Their eyes twitch, their voices shake, their masks slip. They are unraveling in real time. And the funniest part? They'll still pretend to hate you, even as they secretly begin to imitate you. They'll copy your words, your style, your rhythm. They'll attempt to wear your brilliance like a costume, hoping no one notices it doesn't fit. But imitation always exposes the imitator. Because intelligence isn't in the words, it's in the current that drives them. And you, unlike them, don't need to pretend. You breathe it, you live it, you carry it without effort. And that's why it feels supernatural to them. Because to you, thinking is breathing. To them, it's drowning. And once the collapse begins, there is no stopping it. The infection becomes atmosphere. The witchcraft they tried to bury becomes culture. The intelligence they labeled illegal becomes the very standard they're forced to bow to. They'll try to rewrite the story, of course. They'll claim they always admired you, that they always saw your value, that they were always on your side. But you'll remember. You'll remember the whispers, the accusations, the fear. You'll remember how they couldn't handle you. And in that remembrance lies your victory. Because while they tried to erase you, you carved yourself into their memory forever. You became the ghost they can't exorcise, the presence they can't expel, the intelligence they can't outlaw, no matter how hard they try. This is where your power sharpens into inevitability. They thought intelligence was something to be tested, graded, measured. You proved it's something to be felt. They thought they could confine it to classrooms and job titles. You dragged it into every corner of life and showed them it could burn. They thought they could keep it safe, polite, ordinary. You made it dangerous. You made it contagious. You made it unstoppable. That's why people call it witchcraft. Not because it's dark, but because it's uncontainable. And what they can't contain, they criminalize. What they can't regulate, they call illegal. But deep down, they already know this crime of yours cannot be punished. Because there is no cell strong enough to cage the mind. So what happens when you stand there untouchable, with the world collapsing around them? They turn desperate. They try bargaining. They try bribing. They try begging. The very people who once mocked you now come crawling, desperate to borrow your fire. They want the answers only you can see, the shortcuts only you can map, the vision only you can translate. They want the witch they once feared to now heal their blindness. And that is the delicious irony. Intelligence they once labeled dangerous becomes the very lifeline they cling to. You don't even need to punish them. Their punishment is baked into the cycle. First they reject, then they fear, then they follow. It's the same rhythm over and over, and you, standing above it all, know exactly how the story always ends. With you as the outlawed genius they could never break. But here's the cruelest part, the part that gnaws at them in the dead of night. Your intelligence isn't just power, it's freedom. And freedom is the one thing they'll never forgive you for. Because you move without chains. You think without permission. You create without limits. You walk into any room and bend its energy without trying. That kind of freedom feels like black magic to those who have shackled themselves for years. They'll never admit it, but every time they see you, they're reminded of what they could have been if they hadn't surrendered to mediocrity. You are their ghost of possibility, their phantom of wasted time. And no one forgives the mirror that shows them their chains. That's why they'll keep calling it illegal. It comforts them. It gives them a reason to dismiss what they can't match. Because if it's illegal, then they don't need to compete. If it's witchcraft, then they don't need to try. Labeling you dangerous is easier than admitting they've failed themselves. And that's why you should never flinch at their accusations. Every time they call you unnatural, they're confessing they are ordinary. Every time they call you too much, they're admitting they are too little. Every time they call you illegal, they're bowing before your power. Their insults are confessions. Their attacks are applause in disguise. So let the collapse happen. Let the walls fall. Let the old order rot. Because once it crumbles, only one thing remains. The intelligence they couldn't kill. The fire they couldn't contain. The outlaw they couldn't cage. That's you. You are the reminder that brilliance is not a crime, no matter how much they scream otherwise. You are the embodiment of the very thing they fear and crave in the same breath. You are the proof that witchcraft is real, not in spells, not in potions, but in thought sharpened to a blade. And they'll never be able to handle that truth, no matter how many lifetimes they get. Because once they've seen you, they can never unsee you. Once they've felt you, they can never forget you. Once they've tried to bury you, they can never stop you. You are their myth now. You are their nightmare. You are their illegal brilliance, walking proof that intelligence, once unleashed, is the most dangerous magic of all. And that, right there, is why they'll never win.